My name is Sean Johnston. I run a small web design studio called Sean Johnston Designs. And what we pretty much do is build WordPress websites from scratch, custom stuff for small businesses and new to web.
Hey there, I'm Greg, the Small Biz Doer. Today's video is about websites. How to easily create a website by yourself, or if that's not your thing, some smart questions to ask a professional web developer so that you get a great website at the end.
So the best place to start for non-budget is not to go find somebody to do it for free. There's a lot of really great resources out there because at the end of the day you want to be able to manage your website. So it'd be a simple matter to download and install WordPress for free, for example, and then go to a website like themeforce.net, spend $30, pick up a decent template, and follow the instructions and set it up. Anybody with a modicum of technological ability could probably figure out how to do it. You have the theme, the look of the site. That's the front-facing part that you interface with the browser. You have the back-end component, so the content management system in order to be able to deal with that content. But actually the most important part of any website is the content. There's an old adage in the web design world where content is king. So at the end of the day, the look of a site brings some credibility, but the content of the site is what's going to have people come and stay there. So any website, there's two pieces that people will get confused with one another. So you have your URL or your web address, which you register with a registrar or a registrant company. And that usually runs about $30 for every 2 years, and you have to pay for that as long as you own the website. If you let it lapse, you could lose the address. It could be a problem. The other part is the host. You need a place to put the files online in order for browsers to be able to interface with the designs. So what you're doing is that when somebody goes to the URL, it's being redirected to where the files live. So those are the two technical portions that you need, and of course you need the actual website to live on that host. And hosting can range anywhere from $7 a month with GoDaddy to $100 a month with a dedicated server. Depends on what your website needs are. There's a number of great places. There's a free site called Stock Exchange. It's one of the largest royalty-free photo places, don't know what else to call it. For a free login, you can download as many images as you like. And then if you have a little bit of money to spend, you can go to iStockPhoto.com or a couple of other ones, Phototally and a few other ones. You purchase a handful of credits. They're about a dollar a credit. Most images that would be the right size for the web would run anywhere from $2 to $7, and you get lots of high quality images. You need to be able to at least create a hosting account, create a database, and then be able to follow some simple instructions to set up the config file, which you can use a text editor to do. So I mean, it's a little bit of patience and just painstakingly following the instructions. It's not too difficult, especially if you're with a good host, and setting up a database is as simple as a couple of clicks. Installing the theme once WordPress is in place is much easier. It's just uploading some files and activating it. And then again, following the theme instructions to set up some of the settings that can come with some of them.
A lot of web hosts have the ability to install WordPress using some automated scripts, such as Fantastico. If you ever used a wizard to install software on your computer, then you know how to do this.
You can buy WordPress packages, just to continue on the WordPress string, that will come with WordPress installed already. So all the hard stuff's done for you. There are hosts as well that will walk you through installing WordPress or do it for you for a small fee. So all you would really have to do is log into your backend, which would be the same as a username and password. It's like any other email application. And then add a theme. It's a couple of clicks of a button. It's a lot like using any application on your computer. So it doesn't take much technological knowledge at all to set something like that up.
I've also seen some website in a weekend courses where a group of people get together with an instructor and learn how to build their website all in a couple days. That might also be a good option for you.
The editor is called the kitchen sink. Is literally no different than your Word editor. It's as easy and as simple to as insert pictures and edit your page content and update it as using Word. So if you can use Word, you can use WordPress. Not paying enough attention to your content. Small novels on your front page, bad pictures, no calls to action, things that make it very clear why somebody is there and what you want them to do. Again, internet users' attention span is really short, and if they're even kind of confused, they'll bounce, and your site's a failure if that happens. So the focus really should be on your content, and some of the things you want to make sure you get across in the first 5 to 9 seconds is who you are, what you're selling, and why this person wants it. You only have that small window of opportunity. And the other thing too is not keeping it up to date. A site with old content is not a trusted content site, and people will just leave. It's very important to keep your content fresh and up to date. Yeah, I understand the need to try to keep things cheap. GoDaddy, for example, even though they're not my favorite host, their backend is really difficult for us developers to use. Offer $7 packages a month. I mean, that's a nominal fee and well worth the extra speed and bandwidth that you're going to get over a free host. And why is that important? Because a slow site is a site that nobody wants to use. Not everybody is on high speed. Not everybody's on a T1 line at that work. There are a lot of people who are still on light cable modems, even some dial-ups, and the free hosts just don't allow enough bandwidth for that exchange of data to happen between the host and your browser that a paid hosting site would be able to offer you, so that things can happen a little faster, and that people don't get bored waiting for your site to load. You'll also get a lot better support technically as well with a paid host. So that's something to consider as well if your site gets hacked, if you get a virus on it, if it's down. Some free hosts are down all the time. So also something to consider. You get much better service. ISPs, free hosting, they're great for things like a family website or sharing pictures with your kids' grandparents or something, because the URLs, you don't have much control over the web address itself. Same thing for WordPress.com or Blogger or Tumblr sites. Again, your URL is your name.wordpress.com, for example, which isn't really appropriate for a business. But if you wanted to start up a blog that was a slightly different business, potentially might be okay. But again, I recommend paid hosting when you can, just so that you can kind of continue that veneer of professionalism, which is really important to build credibility. There's a couple of reasons why you want to make sure you own your own domain. If you have a temporary one and you switch it later on down the road, you've lost any equity you had in it. And there's a very important equity to consider with the URL, and that's something that Google calls domain age. The longer you own a site and the longer your relevant content has been with that URL, the better it performs in your search rankings. And I know a lot of small businesses think, well, I don't have to worry about Google, it's all word of mouth, everything's going fine. But why turn down something that's going to benefit your business in the long run? As long as you live on the internet, and as long as you have content on a site that's attached to a URL, you're building equity with Google one way or another. So, if you think ahead, even if you don't think you're going to need it, I mean, you can always say no to new business, but at some point, domain age and domain equity are going to become something that you're going to want. And if you've been putting some time and effort into that, even a little bit, with a long-term plan for your website, you're just setting your business up to succeed that much better. Most people think a website is just it's a pretty thing, it's an aesthetic piece that is just out there like a brochure, and sure, 8 or 9 years ago that's what they were. A website now is more like a 24/7 salesperson. It's more of, it's more like a house. And a web designer is more like an architect nowadays. There's like any architect, you understand the local bylaws, the the footprint that it's allowed to have, the space that it's going to inhabit, who's going to live in it, how they want to use it, and then what it looks like. I mean, there's a lot of factors to a modern website, and modern internet users are a lot more savvy and a lot more mature, and they can spot amateur websites and leave over professionally built websites and stay. Again, the way a site looks and performs builds a lot of credibility, which can reflect, well or poorly on your company, and you only have one chance at a first impression.
Perhaps the initial setup of a website is just a bit too overwhelming for you. So Sean has some tips on how to hire someone to help you out.
It's a new industry, and there's there's a lot of people out there who say they know what they're doing and then can't, or get busy and disappear, or really meant well but can't follow through. So it's a bit difficult. You want to make sure that when you find a web developer, or think you found a web developer, always check their references. If they don't have any references, that's probably a sign. I myself have a well-maintained testimonial page that are linked to all my LinkedIn referrals. So my potential clients can check up on me as much as they feel comfortable. It doesn't necessarily matter where they are. I know there is a lot of conversation about is offshore bad, is offshore good. I mean, most of the time all you're really stumbling with is maybe a small language barrier and a time change shift. An Indian company or a Bulgarian company aren't necessarily all bad. There's just as many bad developers in North America. So that's something to consider as well. There's a bit of a misnomer that sort of popped up that's, really not accurate. But yeah, trustworthiness, you want to make sure you can follow up on previous clients to ensure that what was promised was delivered on budget and on time. And you should be prepared for a real professional to pay a deposit, and make sure that there is a contract in place that stipulates the scope of what you're doing, for how much and what their deliverables are in order to receive the final payment. Make sure you protect yourself as well. You can check to see if the sites they build validate. What validate means is that the W3C, which is the Web Consortium, sort of an open source sort of league of people that put together some web standards that we kind of all loosely agree to deal with. But they set out rules for how code should be built. And you can go to the W3C validation service. It's free. It's easy to find. Just Google that. You take the URL of the site they say they built, enter it, and hit validate. If that site validates, then you're probably dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing. If there's 35 errors on that page, you might want to find somebody else.
That being said, I ran the validator on Google and received 40 errors. Now, if you know code, then you probably actually already know this tool and you know how to figure out the errors, and this is very useful for you. If you don't know code, this might be a bit confusing or misleading, because even though Google has 40 errors, I'm sure their site is pretty good.
You should register your URL. You should sign up for your own hosting. You should own the keys to your WordPress development. You don't want them to be doing that stuff for you, because you're essentially marrying them for the rest of your website's life. Trust is a nice thing. It's a very nice thing to be able to do, but at the end of the day, and it can be nice to simply allow a developer to do things for you that you might find a little bit confusing. But I encourage you to stay patient, ask questions, and educate yourself so that you don't have them registering your URL for you, or hosting. Maybe it's not always a good idea to host with the developer, because if they decide they don't want to do the work anymore, or if they forget to renew your URL and then you lose it, you really only have yourself to blame. It's your responsibility to own the different parts of your site, even down to purchasing and registering your e-commerce cart system, if that's something that you're going to do. It's very important that every little bit belongs to you, not to your developer. Your developer should just be facilitating the production of your website, not owning it.
I wholeheartedly agree with this. A website, and not to be cliche, is a living, breathing representation of your company. So you need to have the ability to change it when and how you want to. I hope you found this useful. Until next time.